On this edition of Somerville Neighborhood News, drinking water in Somerville, safe and getting safer, why homelessness in our city is looking more like displacement and the organizations fighting both, plans for a new Somerville High School with Building Committee Chairman Todi Parentozzi and architect Alex Pitkin. And where does the community path fit into the redesigned GLX? All that and more tonight on Somerville Neighborhood News.
Hello and welcome to Somerville Neighborhood News. I'm Joe Lynch. Today is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2016. The water crisis in Flint, Michigan has taken on a national focus as municipalities across the country take a look at the safety of their water and the delivery systems. In older cities, lead water pipes were commonly used. The material was easily available, cheaper than copper, and malleable. Over the last few decades, Somerville has been removing lead pipes through financing programs from the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority, or MWRA. Reporter Laura Onyenaho looks into the health of Somerville's water system.
Looking at all the reports out of Flint and looking how the water is treated differently here and how we respond to issues, your water is the safest it can be. There's no question about that.
The lead crisis in Flint, Michigan has ignited a nationwide look at water quality. The health of any city's drinking water supply can be traced to two factors: the water source and the water distribution system. Somerville's water comes from the Quabbin and Wachusett Reservoir through the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority.
But what the MWRA does is their water comes to us lead-free, and any water that we deliver to your home is lead-free through our service mains.
During the 20th century, lead pipes were commonly used for water distribution to cities and towns.
Back then, they didn't have the chemistry treating and testing capabilities that we have now. Once it was found to be a detrimental effect on health, they started removing it and using it less, switched to brass and eventually to copper.
Massachusetts has 28,000 aging water service lines containing lead. According to the City of Somerville's Water and Sewer Department, Somerville has an estimated 2,200 lead service lines to take out of inventory. Somerville took advantage of the MWRA's financing program over the last decade to replace the city's corroding lead water mains. The authority began a corrosion control program in 1996.
MWRA helps by adding a corrosive protecting material. So they add an additive that helps keep the corrosion down, and they test that chemistry constantly to make sure that it's staying at a proper and safe level.
While the MWRA has ways to test lead levels in the water, their focus is to also educate others on how to test for lead right in your own homes.
Until 1940, lead service lines were in use. They weren't banned until 1940. And lead solder for copper pipes wasn't banned until 1989. So the plumbing in your house is something that you should be aware of.
Zach Lovett is an alternate laboratory director at the Northeast Environmental Laboratories in Danvers. He says the interest by homeowners has increased dramatically since the news from Flint. SNN teamed up with the MWRA accredited lab to conduct and analyze 3 random samples from Somerville's taps. All 3 results came back with undetectable levels of lead, which is good news for homeowners.
What the kit consists of is 2 1-liter bottles that that are clean, free of lead, and the first bottle is used to collect water that has been stagnant in your house's plumbing. The first bottle, which is labeled first draw, you collect the first slug of water coming out of your faucet in the morning. You write the date and time collected, and then you run the water for roughly 2 minutes until it feels cold and fresh, and then you'll collect your second sample, which is more representative of what is coming from the town's water supply.
Checking on water service lines from the property line to the household is the homeowner's responsibility. Most homeowners don't even know that they have lead pipes until there's a problem. That is why the MWRA announced their $100 million no-interest loan program to remove the remaining old pipelines in the 47 communities it serves. Guidelines to the program are still being finalized. From Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Laura Onyenaho.
And a new effort just announced by the state will provide $2 million to test for lead in drinking water at over 1,700 public schools across Massachusetts. Rising rents and soaring home costs are putting many Somerville residents at risk of eviction and displacement and possible homelessness. Local organizations are working and struggling, along with residents, to keep renters in their homes. Reporter Jeanette Or'ehe reports on living on the downside of gentrification in Somerville.
Who knows somebody who has had to leave Somerville because their rent was too high? Who knows of a business in Union Square that went out of business recently? It's not there anymore. Yeah, that's a lot of hands.
Residents, businesses, and community members in Somerville have been working together to fight displacement. As high-end developments continue to be built across the city and existing housing and rental prices soar, many are struggling to stay in the place they call home.
We need to be looking at how we do development without displacing our current residents. And there's been a lot of displacement. There's been a lot of people at really every income level, from the very lowest right up through the higher middle income levels, who've been forced out of the city.
Organizations like the Community Action Agency of Somerville and Somerville Homeless Coalition have been seeing a rising number of families coming to them for one common reason.
A lot of the people coming to us, coming to them for assistance is because they can't meet the rising rent costs. Someone's lease comes to an end, there's a new lease start date with an increase in the rent, and it just becomes more and more difficult.
A lot of families in Somerville are paying upwards of 50% of their income towards rent, some more than 80 or 90%, and just barely getting by.
For Somerville alone, housing costs are 35% higher than the state average.
What it costs to live in Somerville these days for a family of 4, just to pay their rent, just to pay their bills on time, not to save money or take vacations or anything like that, just to get by, is roughly $70,000 a year. And so if you're making less than that, you're either going into debt or relying on government assistance or the generosity of your neighbors somehow. If you're making just a little bit more than that, you might be doing okay, but you're still economically vulnerable these days.
The rising rent costs across the city of Somerville has been an obstacle for many, including the organizations that provide assistance to those who are struggling to make their rent payments every month and in turn are at risk of becoming homeless.
We lease about over 40 apartments now throughout the community, and we're a tenant like anybody else. So if we're not able to continue to meet those rising costs, then we will have to give up those apartments. But the ones who really suffer are the people who are living in those apartments, i.e., our clients.
Organizations in the city of Somerville work together to keep people off the streets all year round in various ways.
We focus on maintaining the housing of people who are at imminent risk of homelessness, so people who are in the eviction process, people who are having their utilities shut off, people who are living in apartments with bad conditions, or people who have had a significant loss of income and need help.
Across the city in Davis Square, Somerville Homeless Coalition provides adult and family shelters as well as healthy food options for families in need. The organization also has 3 caseworkers who work with homeless families and individuals in the Somerville and Arlington areas. One important aspect of preventing homelessness in the city is educating tenants of their rights.
A lot of people have rents that are landlords who are trying to increase the rents or are trying to evict them because they're planning on selling. And one of the most important things to know is if your landlord says that they're evicting you and you don't have a place to go, you do not need to leave. They should know that any rent increase can be a negotiation, and if the landlord is telling you to go, you have legal rights.
Members of Union United have been coming together to bring awareness to displacement, and downpours did not stop them from speaking out. A rally scheduled for Union Square Plaza was moved to St. Joseph Church. The group is among those trying to prevent displacement, as it happened to Marie Duget.
I'm here tonight because Somerville is my home. That's where I spent most of my time. My friends are being displaced, and I was displaced too. I didn't want to leave Somerville, and I hope that every day I can come back. I said that because Somerville is my hometown. is the only city in this country I've ever lived in.
Somerville Alderman Matt McLaughlin attended the rally and along with other aldermen has been pushing to increase affordable housing requirements in new buildings from 12.5 to 20% across the city. He urged residents to come together and make their voices heard.
If we don't have people power, if we don't have the people telling our elected officials, this is a need, not a want. The developers, the consultants, they want things, we need things, and we vote in the city. I'm a voter as well as an elected official. But we need to let people know, let your elected officials know that this is not going to stand.
Somerville is an amazingly tight community. For, considering its size, we're nearly, 80,000 people living in the city. You can't know everybody, but it is in some ways it's a small town, and people do know a lot of folks, and there's networks of support everywhere. Anybody can get help here if they reach out for it. And we certainly, CAS will welcome anybody who walks in the door. I know virtually every agency in the city will do that. So I'd say we're really lucky in that regard.
For Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Jeanette Origel.
You can contact the Community Action Agency of Somerville, or CAS, at cassomerville.org or by calling them at 617-623-7370. And for the Somerville Homeless Coalition, contact them at homelesscoalition.org. Call them 617-623-7165. The Green Line Extension interim team wrapped up their public meetings last week with an overall review of the effort to bring the project back into budget. Earlier in April, the team shared their redesign of the community path portion of the project with a large and vocal group of residents. SNN News Director Heather Avison was there.
Hundreds of residents attended the recent GLX public meeting to see and hear what the interim team had in mind for the community path. More than 60 residents signed up to speak. Interim director of the project, Jack Wright, delivered the first piece of troubling news before setting forward the team's alternatives.
The cost of the path turned out to be about $100 million. We're talking about a 2-mile path. That's obviously staggeringly expensive. The cost is only about $20 million for the alternate path. So the alternative path, what does it do? It focused very heavily on reducing those retaining walls, using less retaining walls, trying to keep existing walls as much as possible. There is about half a mile, a little more than half a mile of the path is not in the cut. The as-designed path followed the alignment all the way down through. We took it out for a piece of it and put it out on city streets, and you'll see that.
The proposal to take almost half a mile of the path out of the cut and onto the open road, including a section along McGrath-O'Brien Highway, drew the greatest criticism from the crowd.
My name is Steve Kaiser. I live in Cambridge. I'm probably one of the few people in this room who rode my bicycle to this meeting along McGrath Highway. And it was a very unpleasant, distressing experience.
I also am in favor of the community path. I was very much looking forward to it as a low-stress option for riding my bike from where I live to downtown. And I have concerns about the tunnels, or boxes as you call them, and about riding on the McGrath Highway. I could do that now, but I think it's really scary, and I can't imagine families or older people or anybody who is timid getting on the McGrath Highway with a bike. Thanks.
People who can transport themselves year-round without a car, without a train, as long as they have a place to do that. But more importantly, how do you get to the train if there's no way to walk there or ride your bike there? You're going to drive there? There's no parking. So this is a very important piece to make the Green Line work. But it's also open 24/7, and it doesn't break down like the Red Line always does.
And I think you can tell from the passion tonight that the people here really feel that the community path is a vital component of a complete project. And we tried to be responsive to that by providing a pathway that we think meets all the criteria that are necessary to provide a reasonable path connecting all those vital locations, but doing it at a reasonable cost.
Lynn Weissman is co-chair of the Friends of the Community Path. The group has been working on its own alternative plan and presented it to the GLX team shortly before the meeting.
There were overlaps in our plan and their plan from Lowell Street to Central Street, from behind the V&A to Central Street. And then there were some other overlaps, but there were some other places where we believe our plan will be a great improvement. We're excited about the fact that the path stays on the south side of the corridor for the whole time. It maintains all the street access points. It stays in the rail corridor, crossing the Fitchburg crossing, that mess of tracks by Brick Bottom, and it doesn't go on McGrath Highway, which is a very polluted corridor.
The last scheduled public meeting on May 5th was canceled by the team, citing the need to wrap up their report and get it ready to present to the MBTA and DOT boards on May 9th. You can view all the presentations and comment at greenlineextension.eot.state.ma.us. Somerville Neighborhood News will be at the May 9th meeting and report back. Now let's see what's happening this week at the Somerville Journal with editor Dan Atkinson.
Hello, this week in the Somerville Journal, we'll be looking at how the city intends to pay for its many capital projects coming up over the coming years. We'll be looking at road rage and bicycles on Somerville streets, and we'll be checking in with clients of the Red House after their program was shut down more than a month ago. You can always find us online at somerville.wickedlocal.com and follow us on Twitter at VilleJournal. And even though we'll be leaving the office here on Central Street as of May 6th, you can still get in touch with me at 617-629-3385 and datkinson@wickedlocal.com. Thank you for visiting our office.
After months of design review and community input, the Somerville High School Building Committee has made its recommendations and submitted its feasibility study to the Massachusetts School Building Authority. From 8 alternatives for renovation or reconstruction, the committee is focusing on one plan that incorporates the need for 21st century learning, updated and efficient infrastructure, and better land use. Building Committee Chairman and former Superintendent Tony Parentazzi and architect Alex Pitkin of SMMA shared the plan with me on a special episode of Greater Somerville before last week's public meeting. Between the architectural firm, the committee, and public input, you've kind of whittled this down to an option. And the option says, considering everything we talked about using open space in the city, what limited open space we have, we're going to try to incorporate on Central Hill, saving some historic part of this building, but we're going to build new around it. So do you want to kind of...
Sure.
Do we want to talk about it in terms of the alternative? Because I think that's what people are going to see on your website.
I think when you look on our website and you go to Alternative 4B, which is the preferred option voted by the Building Committee on April 11th, what you will see is the 1895 building standing alone with the 1929 sections of the building around it removed. And the high school really built to the east, or if you're standing on Highland Avenue, to the right of the property, surrounding both the War Memorial front of the old gymnasium, the current library, and the field house. We're retaining the field house, retaining the front of the War Memorial, and possibly more. That is an engineering question. And retaining the original 1895 front of that building with the 1914 corners still attached. So what's being created is an open space. Now, when you go over the cusp of the hill, there would be an athletic field behind the 1895 building, and we are proposing to put a parking structure beneath that.
And that, you know, for the folks who are looking hopefully at this slide at home, what they are looking at is the School Street entrance to that back parking lot. That's what you're talking about, where the athletic field and the parking would be. So it kind of actually comes behind City Hall and then goes behind the old 1895 entrance to the existing high school. Talk about the advantages of that, because I see on the slide there, on the depiction, you have a little bit of green roof area.
Correct, and this is all obviously to be resolved with our next level of design effort, but the thinking here was that we would think of the site as a master plan, not just simply a high school, not just simply City Hall or the main branch of the library. How do we think of this as a composition for all these many different people, citizens of the city that are going to be coming and using the Central Hill? And so the field on top of the parking is something that we had familiarity with and was one of the things that we also touted. We've done one at WPI and also two down at Providence College. Very rare experience actually in our Commonwealth, but the idea of having a turf top field on top of structured parking is a complicated endeavor, but it really speaks to the question of the fact that Somerville doesn't have available open space.
You can watch our entire conversation on the Somerville High School building project at SCATV, somerville.org, or on YouTube. The City of Somerville and the Recreation Department have come up with a novel way to increase green play space this summer. Reporter Laura Onyenaho takes us to the new turf.
This spring, the Founders Memorial Skating Rink receives a new facelift. The Somerville Recreation Department introduces its new indoor turf field.
The kids are excited. They're running around indoors. They're like, oh my gosh, the look on their faces when they come in has been priceless. So it's been really fun today.
The rink opened to residents of all ages for a free day of play. The Recreation Department temporarily changed the ice rink into an indoor field.
Usually the summertime, it's a downtime for the ice rink, and so we decided that to make an indoor turf facility to have more opportunities for folks in Somerville to have some indoor turf play.
City officials spent more than $67,000 to install the temporary turf on the ice rink. The turf will open from April and close in September when the skating season begins. Lathan says the community can rent the use of the turf field, the same as other city fields, for youth recreation, sports leagues, and private parties. This is the first time the rec department is hosting this event. She views it as a great alternative space for youth to play during the spring and summer months.
I would say this is pretty fun because you get to play with a lot of your friends if they come, and it's really big, and it's like it's a turf, so you can run around, you can fall, it doesn't hurt.
Well, I really like it because I feel like it's inside during the cold weather, and I love this because we get to experience playing sports with other people that we don't really know.
The Recreation Department staff coordinates all activities and sports within the facility. According to the staff, their hope is for residents to take advantage of the programs the indoor turf will provide.
When I was a kid, I joined all the rec programs, everyone that I could, and I had so much fun, and I made so many good friends, and all my coworkers are my best friends, so working with the kids and giving them what I had when I was a little kid is important to me.
So there's nothing else in Somerville like this, so I think that it's really cool to have a field in the ice skating rink.
For Somerville Neighborhood News, I'm Laura Onyenaho.
Patriots' Day is a unique Massachusetts holiday. Whether you brave the early morning chill to watch Minutemen face off with the regulars, cheer on Paul Revere as he makes his way through Somerville, line the marathon route, or catch the game at Fenway, it's truly a Massachusetts hometown tradition. For Dan Burke of Boston Free Radio, it's another reason to reconnect with some favorite films.
To many Massachusetts residents, Patriots' Day is best known for the Boston Marathon, as it should be. However, Patriots' Day is actually a day that commemorates the first battles of the Revolutionary War, the battles of Concord and Lexington. So I decided to make this segment about films that celebrate patriots. Not necessarily those that fought in the Revolutionary War, in fact, not necessarily those that fought in a war in general, just somebody who selflessly sacrificed something for their country.
This will be the first time in 2 years that you'll have heard from me.
Unbroken tells the incredible true story of Louis Zamperini, who went through one ordeal after another, and that's not even including training for the Olympics. At first, he was in a plane crash and was lost at sea for 45 days. And if that wasn't bad enough, he He was rescued, if you could call it that, by Japanese soldiers and put in a prisoner of war camp that makes Bridge on the River Kwai, one of my favorite movies by the way, actually look like a summer camp.
Look at me. You're nothing.
It's an incredible true story about vigilance, determination, and courage. And it's amazing that this guy got out of it alive and only died just a few years ago. Once you see the movie, you will definitely feel patriotic.
I've submitted your name to be commissioned colonel of the 54th Massachusetts Infantry.
Given that Patriots Day is celebrated primarily in Massachusetts, one great movie to watch on Patriots Day is Glory, which tells the true story of the 51st Massachusetts Regiment who fought during the Civil War. Glory features stellar performances by Matthew Broderick, Morgan Freeman, Cary Elwes, and an Academy Award-winning performance by Denzel Washington.
Can you let us head on up there where the real fight is?
It actually didn't get as much accolades at the Oscars as it should have, and it's a travesty that this movie came out in the same year as Driving Miss Daisy, and Driving Miss Daisy won Best Picture. However, it is a great film, and certainly makes you appreciative of those who fought before us. I did say earlier that patriots were not necessarily those who fought in battle, and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, directed by Frank Capra and starring the great James Stewart, is an example of one of those patriots. A patriot who didn't fight on the battlefield, but still gave selflessly for a good cause, a national cause. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is a film about a David and Goliath battle, if you will, and it's certainly one of the most influential American films ever made. The Mr. Smith in the title is an idealistic, newly elected congressman who finds, much to his dismay, that Washington is a lot more corrupt than he initially anticipated. But he refuses to be a puppet and still stands up for what he believes throughout the film, refusing to sell out. And there's nothing more American than that.
I was ready to tell you that a certain man in my state, a Mr. James Taylor, wanted to put through this dam for his own profit. A man who controls a political machine and controls everything else worth controlling in my state. Yes, and a man even powerful enough to control congressmen, and I saw 3 of them in his room the day I went up to see him. The Senator yield. No, sir, I will not yield.
And finally, American Sniper is among the most recent films on this list. The movie tells the true story of Chris Kyle, a U.S. Navy SEAL who served an unprecedented 4 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan. This movie gives you the whole scope of his life before enlisting, during his enlistment, and also after, where he experiences post-traumatic stress disorder.
I guess I just needed a minute.
Regardless of how you feel about the Iraq or Afghanistan war, which probably was the main point of controversy of this film, you can't deny the sacrifice that Chris Kyle made for this country. And I can personally say that when I saw this film, I definitely felt a lot more patriotic and a lot more appreciative of the troops. So those are my choices for the best films about patriots for Patriots Day. If those aren't patriotic enough for you, I will have more patriotic films for the 4th of July.
Dan Burke hosts Words on Film, a weekly film review show on Boston Free Radio, a member of the SCATV family. You can catch Words on Film with Dan at bostonfreeradio.com every Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m. That is our newscast for tonight. We'll be back on May 17th at 7 p.m. on Channel 3. Check out all our news stories at somervilleneighborhoodnews.org. Somerville Neighborhood News is a community service production of SCATV. We invite you to get involved. Visit our Facebook page, SCATV-SNN, to comment. Tweet us at SCATV-SNN. Call us, 617-628-8826. Or you can always email us at news@scatvsomerville.org. I'm Joe Lynch. Thanks for joining us. See you around the neighborhood.